Tracy Tourneur is an American citizen and a homeschool mom living in France. Tracy is married to an amazing guy who serves in the French army, and she met him at the NATO headquarters in Virginia and has lived in France for the past 12 years. She's going to share a story today that is going to send a shiver up the spine of every freedom-loving person. I don't care where you live. I don't care if you're in Europe. I don't care if you're here in the United States. But it is a story of extreme caution for those of us who love freedom. They have been denied their petition to homeschool their son, Emmanuel. And this, to me, reminds me of why we cannot give an inch, not 1 millimeter, to the people who want to interrupt the parent-child bond and take away the freedom of parents to direct the upbringing of their children. This is a powerful conversation for an ongoing situation right out of Paris, France. And she's coming to us today at the Off the Bench podcast. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Before I jump into my interview with Tracy today, I want to remind you that you can study with me through the book of Revelation. Listen, guys, pay attention to what's happening in the news. This is an incredible time to be studying Revelation. And I'm just finishing up the 7 letters to 7 churches. So basically the introduction to the book of Revelation. If you want to know what God says about things that are going to be unfolding in the future, you can join me for this study. It's a pretty involved study. I teach once a week online and in person at Firmly Planted Family. And you can find out more by going to faiththatspeaks.com. If you've got any questions at all, reach out to us and we'll help you. But I want to encourage you, you guys, there's a section of that Bible study that's made just for children so that you can talk about the things that are coming according to God's word to your children as well. This is an incredible time to study with me, and I hope you'll join me for that at Faith That Speaks. Without further ado, I would love to introduce you to my friend Tracy. This is going to encourage you and hopefully help you to engage in the battle to retain parental rights and the right to freedom in the United States. So, Tracy, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad that you've joined me today from France. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Heidi, for having me.
I want to jump right into this because you have a very incredible story. And I think it's a cautionary tale because what's happening in France and Germany and other parts of Europe should be very alarming to people who appreciate and want freedom and the right to educate their children as they see fit. And so I would love to just start. You have a really amazing story of how you met your husband. And I had the privilege, of course, as I said in my introduction, of meeting the two of you at a Teach Them Diligently conference in the United States. Tell us a little bit about how you met your husband and his history as a part of the French military and where you came to make a decision to homeschool.
Sure, Heidi. Well, my name's Tracy, and I am an American. I was born and raised in Virginia until about 12 years ago, we moved to France. I met my husband, who is he was a French Army officer. At the time, he was stationed at the NATO headquarters in Norfolk, Virginia. That's where we met. And we were married while still living in the U.S. And then 1 year later, his military career brought us back to Paris. And we've been here now for 12 years, here in the Paris surroundings. And we have one 9-year-old son who we homeschool. I personally knew I would always want to homeschool. I never actually dreamed or fathomed that would not be a possibility. That's what's so really incredible, I think, about our story now is I was very, very blindsided by it. I was just one of those people that just thought it would never happen. And even when we started seeing the warning signs that it was beginning to happen here in France, quite honestly, I never thought it would happen to us.
So you were homeschooled. I want to ask a question because I think this is an interesting part of your story. You were homeschooled yourself, and that was a tremendous blessing to you, right? Because you didn't have a good experience in school here in the United States, right?
That's correct. For years and years, I just was under the typical peer pressure. I think the peer pressure to be popular and to be cool, and the bullying that comes along with that as well. So peer pressure slash bullying, all of those things just made I was under an intense amount of pressure and stress that highly impacted every aspect of my life until finally my parents did agree and make the decision to take me out of school, to have me homeschooled, which I think is not another minor detail, that my parents felt completely incapable of doing that themselves. They felt that they were not equipped as parents to homeschool me. So they found a pastor in our local area who came to our house regularly to homeschool me. And I was not a Christian at the time, nor was my family. So I think it's a very interesting detail that I would later become Christian. And this pastor is who homeschooled me, who had a significant impact on my life. So from that being such a wonderful experience, it lifted all of that pressure and allowed me to really flourish and become the young woman that I was designed to be. And having experienced that, I knew I would always want to offer that same opportunity to my children.
Yeah, and your husband. So now there's so many aspects to your story that I think are amazing, because first of all, you're an American citizen that's being denied the right to homeschool your own child in France, but also your husband is not a threat to the nation, right? Because this homeschool law was really created so that the French government could start to stem the flow of Islamist nationalism that is really spreading through Europe, and particularly in France. We've seen it rear its ugly head in the recent days over in London. And so it really is multiculturalism failing in the nation of France. And so they're trying to stem that problem. And the way that they've done that is create a law that was designed to protect French nationals and really the culture of France from this encroaching threat. But your husband served in the French army for 28 years. He was the recipient of the French Medal of Legion of Honor for 25 years of service. So this is a guy who the French government would be like, absolutely homeschool your kids. And so it had to have come as a shock to you when on July 3rd of this year, the French Department of Education denied your husband and yourself the opportunity to homeschool Emmanuel. That had to have come as a shock.
It absolutely was, Heidi. It was a tremendous shock for us. And again, when we initially submitted now our request for authorization, we did it a bit lightly, a bit naively, just kind of, we sent in a little 2-page report, exactly for the reasons that you stated, having understood that this law was to counter separatism and Islamism. We thought, certainly us as a military family, we do not have anything to be concerned about.
Right.
So we did, we approached that a bit lightly. And even when we received the rejection the first time, we thought, okay, we were too light. We didn't explain to these people enough about our family. They must have misunderstood something. So let's go the extra mile. So we did. We took that 2-page report and it became a 24-page report that included 16 pages about our entire family's background, my husband's career, our child, his specific needs for homeschooling in this situation, and as well as all of the ways that we would accommodate, that we would meet the French what's the equivalent of the Common Core standards to show that we were serious. We are giving him an education, all of these things. We thought that would clear it right up, any room for question or doubt.
Right.
And even furthermore, when at our first court appearance, in case there was any doubt still existing, my husband even pinned his Medal of Honor onto his suit as we walked into the courtroom to stand before the judge, and still we refused 2 more denials to our request at that time.
Wow. And so this really, I mean, the reason why I think this story is so important for those of us who are living in the United States, and there are quite a few people now that listen to this show that live in Europe, particularly over in Britain at this time in history, but your family is being denied this right based on a law that was introduced to fight Islamist separatism and encourage citizenship. You guys are not a threat. You're obviously, I mean, I love that you wrote in your letter to me that your son's greatest desire is to join the military. I mean, his mother may be American, but this boy loves the nation of France. You've got the French flag on your front porch, as few French citizens do. And you truly love the nation. And so it begs the question, what is really behind this? And I think it's a cautionary tale because you give these people an inch and they take a mile. So where are you going to go from here? I'm wondering, man, I have so many questions, but part of me wonders, are you thinking we're going to immigrate, back to the United States so that we have freedom to homeschool our son? Where is this going to go, and how are you fighting it in France right now?
So we're still in the legal process here. We do highly consider that we would like to come back to the United States. That's definitely something very, very important to us to maintain this freedom. And it sadly doesn't look very bright here in France. However, for this time, we do feel very much that we are here for such a time as this. So we have decided to stick this process out, to do everything that we can. And we're going to go through the court systems as far and as high as we possibly can, trying to share our story. We're appealing on every level, and until hopefully we'll receive that approval.
Where do you think this is coming from? So when your husband wears his pin, he's received the Medal of Honor for his service in the French military. Where do you think this, what can only be, this is discrimination, right? And it's without basis, without merit, this attack from the French government to what should be your fundamental right to direct the upbringing of your son. Have you guys had any sort of inclination as to what's driving this?
I think so. I think the President Macron is honestly quite clear about it. And if I can find here, I'll quote him in his same speech. He's not hiding anything. He says in his speech here that, so I'm quoting the president here, "School is the mold of the republic. This is what ensures..." Oh, it gets better, Heidi. That's just the beginning. So this is what ensures that we protect our children completely from any religious sign from religion. It is truly the heart of the space of secularism. It is this place where we train conscientiousness so that children become free citizens, able to choose their lives. So I think he's pretty clear. Wow. One of the things that I think that's something to be aware of too, that this law really passed very quickly and without much pushback. I think also due to the fact that it was proposed during the COVID pandemic, when people just really weren't paying much attention to anything else going on. And we were in the midst of several lockdowns here in France. We had a total of 4 months of full-on countrywide lockdowns. And this was after the first
criminal.
Yeah, it was difficult. But so everybody was in a state of stress and fear, and other laws such as homeschooling, as I pointed out, that impacted 0.05% of the population. People just weren't concerned with it. And I think that that's something to be aware of, that we have to remain engaged in all things, no matter what's going on in the environment.
Yeah, it's really important.
Indeed. And another thing that is interesting is when it did go before Congress, some people did push back. There was at least some pushback. And when the president had initially proposed this bill, he proposed that homeschooling would be illegal entirely except for medical cases. So people...
That's Macron?
Yes, that's Macron. Except for medical...
He's a tyrant.
And so people did push back, and they were able to pass 4 criteria that people are now permitted to homeschool under. And one of those, the first being medical situation, the second being if someone lives too far from a school, from their distance, third being that the child is involved in national level art or sport competition. And then the fourth, they just titled a specific situation, that a child has a specific situation. And this is what they used for anyone who was screaming, this is an infringement on human rights. They just said, no, there is this fourth criteria. It's a specific situation. All anybody has to do is say there's something specific about my child, and I have a certain schooling project that's going to accommodate this specific need of my child. That's all they have to do and submit it. And this has been touted again and again. It was just before the United Nations this month, and this is how they are escaping the idea that they are actually infringing on human rights. But the problem is cases such as ourselves, when we actually end up in court or before even just the Academy of Education, and we say our child has this specific need, and in our specific child's need, we mentioned his bilingualism, among many other things. We had about 12 different criteria, and they just come back and say, nope, that's not specific. There's nothing special or specific about that. So I think it's a warning that vague language in the law, while we thought it would be good for us as homeschoolers, like, okay, that accommodates us. But actually the vagueness of that law has permitted them to get away with things.
Yeah, that's exactly why they did it, right? They did it that way, knowing that they would give you this false sense of security. And then when you went to apply for the thing that should give you the opportunity, they were like, yeah, no, that's not specific enough. And I think, as I keep saying, I hope people in this country are listening up. I hope they share this podcast far and wide, because if it can happen in France, it can certainly happen here in the United States. It can happen in Canada. And this is globalism. These people are pushing for the removal of parental rights because they want access to your child. And I believe that's the bottom line.
I agree with you, Heidi. Absolutely.
Our country, our world right now, we have allowed people into the highest positions of authority around the world who do not value freedom. And at the end of the day, I thought this was so interesting because Mike Ferris, dear friend of mine and the founder of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, has always held, and he is correct, that this is not about education. This is about control of the heart and mind of a child. And they're using the International Convention on the Rights of a Child to say that children should be allowed to direct their own upbringing. And so the state, in response to that, is taking children really away from the influence as much as they can of their parents, very much like Hitler did, hate to bring his name up, but very much like Hitler did in Germany when all those children were required to go to the SS schools. They took them away from their parents. This has a very familiar undertone to it.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. And I'm glad you mentioned Mike Ferris from HSLDA, because I totally agree with you. He's spot on. He's a smart man. We need to listen to him, because I listened recently to your podcast with him, which was actually what inspired me to reach out to you now, although we had met previously. But because he talks about the waves, I think he refers to 3 waves of homeschooling. That first, they kind of attack like, parents, you can't do this. Secondly, that was the socialization. And then now the third wave is exactly this, that kind of in essence, we need to protect children from their parents, right? That it's not under parental authority to choose the education. And that's what Mike Ferris is saying. And it's exactly what's happening in France. And that sadly, I think, I do hope that you can, we as Americans can learn from what's going on here in France, because they're just a step ahead of you, and it can be a cautionary tale, exactly as you said, to remain aware, to be aware, to be engaged, because it's happening slowly, step by step. All of these little things, they're gradual, and it is ultimately taking away the parental rights. I mean, that's one of the things I experience here is this. For several reasons, I think the law passed very easily here, but one of them is because the general population has accepted the idea that the government knows better than them, that the government can take care of their children better than they can. And it's a lie. It's a tragedy.
These are very, very scary times for young families in particular. And I'm coming to the end of my full-time parenting our youngest child, and now is almost 13 years old. So of the 7 of our children, 6 of them are raised, and I'm looking at my grandchildren now. I have a 10-year-old grandson, an 8-year-old, a 3.5-year-old, and a little 1-year-old grandson. And this is the generation that is going to be suffering the repercussions of a loss of parental authority in the lives of their children. And it cannot be overstated that if it's happening in France, if it's happening in Great Britain, if it's happening in Europe, it absolutely can happen here in the United States. And we need to do everything we can to stop it, because really the administration and the government is putting their hands into families, to private family matters. And the only way we stop it, Mike Ferris is I love having him on the show, because he says you cannot give these people an inch. If it even looks remotely threatening to parental rights, we need to fight it with everything that's in us, or we wind up exactly where you are. Because I guarantee you, Tracy, this didn't happen in just one decision. It was a series of small decisions that parents thought, oh, that's okay, we can deal with that. There should be no quarter for these people.
Absolutely. And I think another important detail, which Mike Ferris also hit upon, is the amount of people who are homeschooling. That some people are concerned that, homeschooling is growing too much, so the government's going to start being concerned. And it's the exact opposite. And you can look at France, that here it is such a small percentage of the population who even homeschools. There's approximately 13 million children that are within schooling age here. And of those 13 million, 60,000 are homeschooled, which calculates to about a 0.05% of the school education. So this impacts about 0.05%. And that's such a small, insignificant number. And that's part of the problem. We had absolutely no political capital to combat this law when it went into legislation. And so I think it's very important that people aren't afraid of that growing number.
Yeah, and it shows you the threat. I mean, the globalist thinking, this very far left government overreach that we're seeing now across the world. It's not just here in the United States and Europe. This is actually a worldwide issue. We can see now that they are very threatened by anyone who thinks differently than they do, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. Maybe your son's going to believe in Jesus. Maybe he's going to be a Christian. Maybe he's going to have maybe he's going to be a conservative. Well, we can't have that, right? And so I think your story is so important for those of us in the United States who are thinking, it can never happen here. It absolutely can happen here. And it's why we need to remain vigilant. I mean, we're looking at dramatically different numbers here in the United States post-COVID for homeschooling. And that has given us a much bigger platform, a little bit of a bullhorn, if you will. But also, it's gotten the attention of the government. And believe me when I say, the hardcore leftists in this nation and most of our kids who are coming out of the public universities right now and our public high schools have a very different view of parenting than you or I do, where we believe that parents should be the ones who have the sole right. I mean, unless you abuse that child, you should have the sole decision making in his life as he's growing up. Where are you guys going to go from here? What's your plan next?
So we still have one more court date that is coming up. It is actually tomorrow morning. So okay. Yes, we have a court date tomorrow morning. We have received, as part of that process, we receive a report from the reporter, who is a person that reads over our case and basically makes his suggestion to the judge of this is what I think your decision should be. And we have already received that. And it is not in our favor. It is again to deny us without any explanation whatsoever. But it's not done. We go to court tomorrow and we still have an opportunity to stand before the judge and present our case and pray.
Wow. Okay. So you and I were talking about this before. You're about 9 hours ahead of us. So this podcast is going to air in the morning. And so it'll be done by then. So you'll have to reach out to me and I'll put an update in the show notes for those listeners who are like, what in the world happened? So Tracy, text me when that happens, maybe, or give me a call or something, and then I can update listeners. But this is really a reason for prayer. And I guess I think it's important to point out in the last minute that we have here, God can do this. We know that the Lord sees the situation that is unfolding around the world, but particularly for you and your son and your husband right now. This is tyranny. It is persecution. It is discrimination. It is all of the things that we have fought for and secured in free civilizations around the world, and it is being threatened right now. And I know that the Lord sees what's going on, and I'm going to continue just to pray for you. I don't think that we said your husband's name, Tracy, on the show. What is his name?
My husband is Bernard, or in French, it's Bernard.
Bernard. Ooh. All right. Well, I only took 2 years of French when I was in high school, and it's been a long time since then. But and I actually heard your French a little bit when you were visiting. You have a beautiful French now. The people of France are beautiful people.
They are.
And it should concern us what is happening to freedom around the world. And so I appreciate you coming on. We'll be praying for Bernard and for your son, Emmanuel, and all that is ahead for you. Please keep us posted. I know eventually, if this doesn't work out, you're coming home back to the United States, Lord willing. And I think God's going to give you a voice, Tracy. I don't believe that the Lord allows these things into our lives for no reason. And you were born, as you said, rightly pointed out, like Esther, beautiful, like Esther, really born for this fight and born for this time in history. So you have our prayers. You have an organization that you're working with, and I want to touch on that really quickly because a lot of people listening to this either have friends and relatives in Europe and France in particular, or living there right now. So what is the website and the name of the organization that you're working with?
So the name of the organization is Ella, and we are a group of homeschooling families that have come together to find solutions. We were already working towards things before this law went into place, but now predominantly to offer a solution for families such as ourselves who will be impacted by this law to maintain some participation in their children's education. So we are the first this year. We have been offered a building by a church, a local church, to open our school. And it's the first recognized flexi schooling model in France. So we're trying to incorporate that flexi schooling model here in France so that parents can remain involved even though they may lose their right to homeschool. And yes, if you want to learn more about that organization or participate in any way, we can use expertise. We can use all of the things because it's something new. You can go to Impact France. Actually, it's impactfrance.org. Where there you'll find many ministries in France, all Christian ministries in France. And you can either search for Ella, it's ELAH, or you can just impactfrance.org/Ella, ELAH. And you'll find the information about our association and ways that you can partner with us.
Well, I'm so encouraged by what you're doing. I'm very encouraged that you decided not to just bow down and give these people what they want, which is to take away your freedom and make you feel like you're the one who has the problem. France is a free country, or at least it used to be. And we need to stand for freedom wherever it is threatened. Tracy Tourneur, I'm so thankful that you've come. Please keep us posted as to what happens with the government and this decision as it relates to your right and your freedom to be able to homeschool your son tomorrow, and we'll be praying for you. I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you so much, Heidi. It's an honor. Thank you so much.
For more information on today's guest and the fight for homeschool freedom in the nation of France, go to HeidiSt.John.com/podcast and scroll down to the notes. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly at HeidiSt.John.com/mailbox Monday. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for listening. Love your people well. Stay engaged. The fight for freedom is worth it. And I'll see you back here at the intersection of faith and